Saturday is Earth Day, and we're talking about the rising popularity of electric vehicles. Now, EV usage is climbing. First quarter sales of electric vehicles surged 45% from a year ago. They now account for just over 7% of total auto sales. That's according to Cox Automotive.
Here are three things to consider when buying an EV. First is a big one. It's the price. The average price of an EV is over $61,000. That's according to Kelley Blue Book. That's $10,000 more than a gas-powered car. To offset the cost, the government covers some tax credits for certain electric vehicles. The credits, they range from $3,700 and $5,700 up to $7,500.
The second consideration is charging. Right now, there are over 130,000 public chargers across the U.S. That's a far cry from the 1.2 million needed by 2027 to support EV adoption, according to S&P Global Mobility.
The final consideration is range. Most electric cars give you 200 miles of driving range for every charge. That's according to Kelley Blue Book. Some, like Tesla Models 3 and Y, provide as much as 300 miles, and the Lucid Air Dream Edition gives more than 500 miles. For more EV considerations, we turn to Ivan Drury, Edmunds Director of Insights. Ivan, good to see you. Let's start with pricing. It's not as simple as saying, here's the biggest difference in the average sticker price, because there's a lot of things to take into consideration. What should buyers consider first?
Yeah, number one, it is those new tax credits, right? It's whether or not the vehicle that you're looking at, does it actually qualify? So number one, they have changed those rules. You've heard about rule changes back in December, and now in March, they're finalized. Some vehicles were kicked off the list. Some have been added. You can now get tax credits again on Teslas that had the tax credits removed. So, don't assume what you knew 6 months ago is the same as today, but that also goes for what's for sale. There's so many more vehicles that are EVs that are for sale in general. Typically people think of Tesla as like the Kleenex of EVs, but nowadays you can get them from very mainstream automakers like Ford and Hyundai. So really the research level that you have to do for an EV, it's greatly increased, but the payoff's fantastic too, because we have more selection and we have more incentivization.
What about the debate that people have been having now for quite some time? They go and they want to get a car, the leasing versus buying. What are some of the things that you need to consider when it comes to an EV versus what you needed to consider with gas-powered cars?
Yeah, here's the great thing is that there's actually a loophole in this new tax credit. So as much as you've heard about where the battery must be, how much chemical components United States based or free trade country based, whereas the vehicle manufactured, the final assembly, that kind of goes by the wayside when you look at commercial leasing. And so what happens is if you lease an EV, almost all of them are going to qualify for that full $7,500 rebate. The thing is, you got to be aware of how much of that actually gets passed on to you as the customer. If you're going to purchase, you got to follow the guidelines for the income, for the build location, the battery, all of that. But if you lease, you get to bypass many of those restrictions. And we've already started to see that it was single-digit leasing. Back in January, it was something like 9-10% of all EVs were being leased. But as the loophole came into effect and more OEMs are aware of this and we're incentivizing their EV leases, we've seen it shoot up to 30%, which is far closer to what a historical norm for EV leasing is, which is more like 50, 60%, because a lot of people, they're still testing the waters with these vehicles. They don't know whether or not it's right for them. They might even be trying a brand that they've never had in the past. And, the thing is that when you buy a vehicle, you want to go with what you know, right? A lot of loyalty comes into play when it comes to vehicle purchases. So leasing was a heavily used, manner of purchase back in the days. And it looks like it's going to come back. And it really is what the customer wants.
Arguably the most important factor in all this is the charging infrastructure, lack thereof in this country. What do you need to consider in terms of where you live, what your lifestyle is, what your commute is before buying an EV?
Yeah, no, that's a huge consideration. It's, if you live in an apartment or a condo, a townhome, if you got an HOA, these are huge hindrances. You can see that trying to get a home charging station can be a real problem. Even if you live in a single family home, this is something where you look at when the house was built, what kind of electrical system, what kind of load you're already placing on it. Do you have solar? Do you not have solar? These are things that don't come into play when you're buying a regular hybrid, even a plug-in hybrid so much, or just the traditional gas car. So really the first thing is, does the vehicle fit your lifestyle? These things are only going to get better over time. We're going to see more range at lower price points. So you don't have to jump the gun right now and adopt as soon as possible. There's a lot of advancement at play. But if you look at those logistical issues that you might be able to work around, if you have a home charging station available, if you've got, one maybe 10, 15 miles away, a level 2, level 3 charger, stuff like that, where you can fast charge this vehicle, it might be up your alley. Again, if your place of work, if there's something along the way or at your place of work, that makes it so much easier. There are local and there's these rebates even for charging stations to put one in your house. We even have it on the site where when you go and search, you want to find out what are the incentives, not just for the vehicle, but potentially for charging my vehicle. How much is it going to be, or how little can it be to install a charger?
All right, Ivan Drury, good to see you, sir. Appreciate all that.